Welcome back to another intimate sit down here on Squadding Quads. And I wanted to make this video to answer a question from a newbie that has left a comment on one of the videos. And I could very easily have just simply replied to this with a text reply, but I figured it needs a little bit more than that because it's a little bit of an involved answer. So the question in question was from Guideline UK. And Guideline UK had seen the review that we'd done of this, the B25, and had asked a question: what do I need exactly to get this up in the air? I'm a newbie to all of the FPV jargon. And it sort of dawned on me that I could have, like I said, I could have just replied and said, get this, this, and this, and you'll be fine. But the problem is, if you're a newbie and you don't understand the jargon, it's really easy to go wrong. I've been helping a gentleman who I'm not going to name because I don't want to embarrass anybody, who has really struggled to get his quad in the air, and he's made a couple of really basic, and I say basic and I don't mean that in a negative way, but a couple of really basic errors. And they're only basic because he doesn't know them. So one of Guideline UK's first questions on the channel was, do I get the 04 version? Do I get the plug and play version? Or do I get the Crossfire version? And what's the difference apart from the cost? And it brings me on to my first point as to what you'll need. You're going to need something called a radio, a transmitter, or, to the kids, a controller. What do I mean? Well, if you're on a budget and you've got small hands, I do not have small hands, as you can see. But if you're on a budget and you've got small hands, you're going to want something like the King of Diddy, the Radiomaster Pocket. This is a fully featured either ELRS controller or a 4-in-1. Straight away, you're going to say, Quads, I don't know what that means. But it's okay, because I'm going to explain it to you right now. In 2025, if you are starting out and you are buying something from scratch, my advice to you is to go with what's called ELRS, which is Express LRS, Long Range System. That is the control link between the controller and the drone. Now, to answer the first question, do I need the ELRS plug and play version or Crossfire version? Well, if you're going to get something like this with ELRS, you're going to need the ELRS version. ELRS is the cheapest of all, although the plug and play version will be slightly cheaper because it doesn't have a receiver in it. It uses the DJI 04 Pro or 03 or Vista even as your control link. And that's something I personally wouldn't recommend because the system of the video and of the control link, you can't use this, by the way, you have to use DJI's own controller as well, relies on the same piece of bandwidth essentially. So if you lose video with ELRS, you can still press return to home. If you lose it with the DJI plug and play system, you can't because it's an S-bus system. Now, that's a lot of jargon. So let's just cut that back a second. My advice in 2025 is to buy something with ELRS. Now, this is a really basic budget controller and it is really small. So if you've got bigger hands, it's going to be no good for you. And if you want something that's a little bit better, you can buy better gimbals, you can buy better switches. But by the time you've done that, you might as well have actually bought something else, in my opinion. Let me show you. And in my opinion, you've got two options. You've got the Jumper T15, which has a full colour touchscreen. This screen here is actually colour. If we've got any battery left, there we go. So it's a full colour touchscreen. So you can just touch the screen and away you go. There we go. You can just touch the screen and away you go. You can have widgets on there by a gentleman called Daniel Barros. I've been saying this for a long time now, but I really must feature his widgets on the channel. They are really, really good. And this is one of my favorite controllers. It's not my favorite, and it's probably not the one I would recommend as a go-to because it does have relatively basic gimbals. Now, Jumper have been saying for about a year that they're about to release all metal or all aluminum gimbals. They sort of did release them and then they stopped, and then they said they had to retool the factory, and then I don't know what happened. I'll be completely honest. So there is that as a bit of an issue, really. It's nice in the form it's in, don't get me wrong, and it is a controller I really, really do like using. But I think there's one that's better if you're starting off in 2025. And that would be the Radiomaster GX12. Now, as a size comparison, so again, if you've got bigger hands, you're going to want something like this. But why is the GX12 so good? Well, there's a few reasons why. Make sure we haven't got any warnings. So we've got an OLED screen on here, which is easier to see than an LCD screen, and to an extent easier to see on a bright sunny day than that colour touchscreen on the jumper as well. What makes this really, really, really good, and why I would recommend this as your first controller in 2025, is it comes with a system called Gemini. Again, it's terminology. What is Gemini? Well, ELRS comes in two flavours. You can have a 2.4 gigahertz control link, or 900 or 868 gigahertz or megahertz, sorry, control link. What's the difference? Well, the 868 isn't as quick, but it will give you a longer range signal. 2.5 is a faster control link, but is more prone to interference. Now that said, really important, I've never had a failsafe on 2.4 gigahertz ELRS. I have had a failsafe in the same area on Crossfire, and Crossfire got me into the hobby, don't get me wrong, so this is not a Crossfire bashing sort of session. I love Crossfire, I wouldn't be here without it, but things have moved on, and I think ELRS is not only cheaper, but I also think it's better. So, why would you want 2.4 gigahertz and 900 gigahertz? Well, the Gemini system doesn't make you choose between them. It uses both at the same time. Really important to also mention that this will also work out of the box without any messing with a standard ELRS receiver as well. So you don't have to worry, oh, I need to buy a Gemini receiver, otherwise it won't work, and I can't use it on my non-Gemini quads. I use this on every single quad I've got, Gemini or not. The Gemini ones, however, and this is where it gets really, really good, is it will automatically switch and use whatever is needed. So if you're perhaps a little bit further away from yourself, if laws and regulations allow, it'll switch to the longer range 868 or 900 hertz version to give you that extra distance. Again, that said, I know people, a guy down the pub who flew 40 miles on 2.4 gigahertz. So it's really not a problem. What it does do though, is if you're in an area of really high interference, you've got two bands, two frequencies, that it will automatically deal with itself. You don't have to do anything. You just turn your quad on, turn your controller on, Gemini will do the magic for you. And that is why I recommend the GX12. But if you really have your heart set on a different controller and still want dual band Gemini, there are external modules for that as well. Let me show you. In the back of most radios or controllers or transmitters, depending how old you are, whether you're a boomer, depends how you describe them, you will have a transmitter module bay, a JR bay, if you like. This is an ELRS. This is a standard ELRS, to be fair. It's got an OLED screen on the back of it, so you can see all the settings, because this TX16 didn't have ELRS, because this is a very OG model. So we did it that way. But there are also Gemini versions, and in my Boxer, which I don't actually have in this room, I'm afraid, my Boxer actually has dual band Gemini in it, and I've been running it for a year before the GX12 even came out, but the GX12 is just so much easier to use. So pick the controller for your budget, but also for the hand size. I mean, look at the difference of this compared to the difference of this. Like, the difference is insurmountable, isn't it? So you need to pick one that is relevant to your budget, but also relevant to your hand size and your requirements as well. This has 1,073 trillion buttons and knobs and dials. This has about 5. So again, you need to decide what you want. This is great to get people into the hobby, but you will outgrow it pretty damn quick if you fly on the regular. That's just my opinion. Call me wrong, it doesn't matter. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's entitled to it. But I wouldn't recommend the Pocket. I would recommend anybody starting out today will get the GX12. Now that automatically will come with ELRS. If you did decide to go with something else, for example, the Pocket, there are two versions. There is a 4-in-1, I think they call it C500, I don't know what they call it, or an ELRS version. Get the ELRS version. Believe you me, it'll save you time. maybe not in the initial setup stage, because it is a bit of a learning curve, everything in FPV is. But trust me, long term, it'll also save you losing your quad as well, because nobody wants that to happen, do they? But that is the first thing that you're going to need to get yourself into FPV, whether it is with the Bee25 or whether it is with any other quad that we've featured here on the channel. That is what you need first of all. You need a controller. Once you've got the controller, you can then go and buy the quad and decide, well, in fact, no, you can't. Let's rewind that. Once you've got the controller, then you're going to need to pick a pair of goggles, and you're going to need to pick a pair of goggles based upon the system that you want to use. Allow me to explain next. In all of these FPV drones is a camera at the front. That is your eyes, not necessarily ears, but that is your eyes of where you're going, and you will use this to be able to see where your drone is going, or maybe even has been, depending which way you're looking. You're going to need to pick a pair of goggles based upon the system that you want to use. There's 4 main systems. There's analog, there's HD0, there's walk snail, and then there's DJI. Now, the majority of the quads I have are DJI. I have some walk snail, I have some HD0, and I have some analog. So, you know, don't get me wrong, I fly everything. I am one of you. I'm just sat here with a little bit of a platform to try and help other people get into the hobby. I prefer DJI. I prefer the quality of it. I prefer the dynamic range of it. I prefer the stabilization of it. It's just what I prefer. It fits my flying style. But pick a system that fits your flying style. And if you're not sure, there's a Discord link down below. Come and join us. Come and ask. View some videos on YouTube. I'm going to put up some comparison videos of each different system as well, but I'm just waiting for the weather to change again for the better. Pick the system you want. We're going to base this particular video on the DJI system, the DJI O4 Pro system, because that is what this particular drone has installed, and that is what Guideline UK asked the question on. So next, you're going to need a pair of goggles. So you've picked the system that you want. In this particular instance, we're picking DJI O4 Pro. So now we need a set of goggles. Now, this also gets a little bit complicated because these are a set of DJI goggles, but these don't work with the O4 Pro. Unfortunately, the way DJI is, when they release new hardware and new revisions, the old ones don't necessarily work with the new ones. They'll be back compatible for a couple of versions, but these are actually version 1. Now, what gets a little bit confusing is there is a version 2 that look exactly like this. They'll have an antenna on the front, which could look a bit different than this. These have just been stripped because these are version 1s. Have got a set of version 2s. Version 2s will also allow you to fly analog. Version 1 will also allow you to fly analog, but no other DJI goggles will allow you to fly analog. So that's also an important thing to know if you also want to get a Whoop that's tiny, unlucky Jesse. Bear in mind that those goggles, the DJI V1 and V2, won't work with the DJI O4 Pro system, which is the latest and greatest. I'll try and put a chart somewhere on screen that shows which goggles work with which VTX. A VTX, to avoid more jargon, is the video transmission system. That is the system that carries the video, essentially, from the drone into your goggles. And there are a few versions when it comes to DJI. They are what's called the Cadex Vista or original air unit. You've got the air unit, what was it called? So that was the air unit light, sorry. Then you had the DJI Air unit. Then we moved on to the DJI O3. Then we moved on to the DJI O4 and O4 Pro. Not all of them work with all goggles. And again, some goggles will allow you to use an analog system. Some goggles won't. I'll come on to other systems in a second, but for the sake of answering this particular question, you're going to need a set of goggles that look like this. Now, these happen to be the DJI goggles version 3, but also the DJI goggles version 2 will work. Now, you may think quads, but you just said V2s don't work. That's right. DJI, in their infinite wisdom, named the set of goggles that I'd shown before, the bigger, boxier ones, as V2s. The goggles 2, which look virtually identical to this in form factor, we just don't have these boxy cameras at the front, will work with the O4 Pro, and indeed the O4 Lite. And indeed, I actually have a set of those myself, and Boy Wonder often uses them whilst I use these, or vice versa. There is very little discernible difference between the two. So ultimately, again, we're coming back down now to budget. Now, there is another set of goggles that you can use with the DJI O4 Pro, and that is the DJI Goggles N3. They are essentially a budget version of the goggles, which just has one screen across and a lot less adjustability. If you cannot stretch to a set of goggles 2 or goggles 3, my advice to you is to not get a set of goggles N3, but to look at a couple of sleeper goggles that you may not realise also work. And they are the Goggles Integra. I said a couple, I actually meant one. The Goggles Integra. They are like a stripped back version of the Goggles 2. They look exactly the same. I think they pretty much, don't quote me, but I think the screens and stuff are relatively similar. It's just the additional features that the Goggles 2 and the Goggles 3 have that the Integras don't have. But again, you'll find them cheaper. I would advise you to stay away from the Goggles N3 as much as you possibly can. So, you want to get this drone in the air. I want to find it. You're going to need an ELRS controller. My advice is the GX12. Then you're going to need a set of DJI goggles. My advice to you is buy the best you can. That's where the experience comes from. That's where the enjoyment comes from. If you're struggling to see something, you're not going to enjoy it as much. So in my opinion, go with the best that you can afford. The DJI goggles version 3 and version 2 are top of the tree. For a budget version, look at the Integras or a second-hand pair of goggles too. If you still can't quite stretch your budget to them and you really want to get into it, then get a pair of goggles N3. They will do the job, but you may outgrow them quicker than what you think. Just very quickly on goggles and systems, there are, as I say, the Walksnail system, the Walksnail system, the HD0 system, and of course the analog system. Those are not interchangeable between either one. However, there are certain goggles like the Goggles X. I do have a pair of them, but the studio is upside down at the minute, as you can see for probable reasons. The Goggles X allow you to add a module, and they also have a HDMI in, which means you can add a module for HD0. The HD0 goggles also have a HDMI in, which means you can add an external module for the Walksnail system and analog as well. So if you do want to pick one of the other systems, Walksnail or HD0, and you're not sure which one to pick and you're not sure which one to settle on, don't worry too much, because you can get an external module for either one of them. DJI, you cannot. So once you're locked into DJI, you are locked in. The only exception to that being if you get a set of goggles 2, you can use the O3 and you can use analog and you can use the Vista. So you do have a little bit of movement, but you can't use the latest and greatest goggles 4. Air Unit 4 version Pro Light words. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just blagging it. I've got to be honest. I'm just blagging it. Anyway, so that is hopefully it's not jargon free, but it is an explainer, really, if you like, of what you need, why you need it, and in my opinions, which are the best ones. I would always say go with the best you can afford. There is a saying, isn't there? Buy cheap, buy twice. And we all know somebody who's got into the hobby and spent as little as possible, and they've either left the hobby because it wasn't as good as what they could see on YouTube or what the mates were flying because they cheaped out, or they ended up buying twice and paying double what they would have originally paid if they'd have just gone in at the highest level they could afford. It's a difficult one, I completely get it. It's a lot of money to invest in a hobby. There are flying clubs all around the country, and there are people that do events that will let you have a look at their stuff. People like me, I have a set of spare goggles with me wherever I go. So if anybody was to be there, they can have a ride along. You can also do something called a buddy box as well. So I could let you fly one of my drones and I'd hold the controller, you'd hold another controller, and then if I could see you got into trouble, I could flick a switch and take immediate control. Great for learning, really good for learning. There's all those options out there. Flight clubs are really good. I found them incredibly useful. For physical reasons, I don't go to the one that I attended anymore. But there's some great guys there. Fellow YouTuber Andy RC goes to the same flight club that I'm a member of. Admittedly, I've not been for a year. Really nice guy, really helpful. And everybody there is as well, to be honest. And you'll find that in FPV. The majority of people are really, really helpful. I am noticing more and more as more people get into the camera drone hobby, it's becoming less and less helpful and more people are gatekeeping. You can rest assured, no matter what level I ever get to on this channel, I will never gatekeep anything. I will always be the same helpful, cheerful soul that I am today. And I'll always help anybody who leaves a question. This has been quite a long video, but I hope it's explained and answered the questions that you've got in the most comprehensive way possible, whilst trying to dial back a little bit of that jargon. If you really wanted to go on a budget, then you're going to be looking at the B25, because that's the drone that's in question, or any other drone that you're curious about, a Radiomaster Pocket, and the DJI goggles N3. My advice is, if you can, push that budget a little bit just to get a little bit higher quality and stuff. You will thank me for it long term, I promise you. You won't thank me for it short term, and your missus probably won't either, but long term you will definitely thank me for it. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Any questions whatsoever, or if I haven't explained anything properly, or if you need anything clarifying, drop them in the comments down below. And until next time, peace out.